Okay, in this next portion of the class, we're going to be kind of mixing three topics. We'll see if we stay in order here. We're going to start by recapping a little bit on the elderly, because we're primarily talking about, we're going to be talking about violence, we're going to be talking about gangs. I don't think the elderly are in gangs, but they might be. But we're going to the Gray Panthers, somebody said. But we will discover that the elderly are a substantial portion of the violent population in this country. That while, well, let me read you first some information here about teen homicide rates and guns and gangs to kind of set the stage for what we're talking about. But then we're also going to find that the elderly and nursing homes and institutions are a livelier, more active group than you might anticipate. So we're going to get some transfer here in the principles that we're talking about. This is an article from the Houston Post, October 14th, 1994, called CDC Teen Homicide Rate Soaring Due to Guns and Gangs. The homicide rate among males ages 15 to 19 more than doubled between 1985 and 1991, a rise researchers attribute to gangs and increased use of guns instead of fists. When it comes to violence in the past, what may have led to fist fights now leads to gunfire, Dr. David Satcher, director of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, said Thursday. The homicide rate for males 15 to 19 went from 13 per 100,000 in 1985 to 33 per 100,000 in 1991, a 154% jump, the CDC said. The nation's highest homicide rate, 41 per 100,000, is among men ages 20 to 24, according to the center. Guns claimed the lives of 88% of the 15 to 19-year-olds killed in 1991. From 1985 to 1991, 97% of the increase was attributed to guns. Homicides, ranking as the number 2 cause of death among males ages 15 to 19, has changed little since 1963. Accidents are the leading cause of death and are responsible for 32% of deaths in that age group. Now, I don't expect you to remember all these statistics, but the point of this is that the teen homicide rate is soaring. While the overall rate is staying about the same, the problem of violence and handguns among teenagers is increasing, or has increased substantially. But also, if you've gotten to the fine print in your textbook, you know that the elderly also constitute, I believe, the second most violent group in the country. At least there are a substantial number of incidents in nursing homes and various institutions where the elderly become violent. Some of this is illness related, some of it, there are all kinds of factors that lead to this, whether it's loss of the immediate care of family members, the change in environment. There's even a phenomenon called the sundown syndrome, which occurs at the end of the day, and violence is more likely to occur among the elderly as well as mentally institutionalized persons. Is more likely to occur around sundown. There's a shift change. There's a change in the habits of the day. You know, after mealtime, there's a change in routine, a change of staff. It's often time to take a bath and get ready for bed. Just the mere fact that the sun goes down, you probably are aware that your mood changes a little bit just over darkness versus daylight. Just things feel different. Well, this is amplified among the mentally ill, among the institutionalized, among elderly in nursing homes, and people who are prone toward violence to start with may be activated more so through this kind of phenomenon. So let's go back to the elderly, as I was saying, for a minute, and think about that. If I were to say name positive words associated, well, let's do it the other way first. What are some negative things that you think about when you think about aging? Just pop off some. Robert?
More sicknesses.
Okay, more illness?
Disease.
Disease? Allison?
Loneliness.
Loneliness? Yeah, Lara?
Helplessness.
Okay, good. Karen?
Loss of status and power.
Okay. Yeah.
Right, deterioration of physical strength and self.
Okay, good. These are common things, and we just, I made a list. You don't have to jot all these down necessarily, but just kind of a brainstorming session that another group had. When we said, what are negative things that you think about when growing up? Gray hair. Now, some people think gray hair is cool and wonderful. You won't all necessarily evaluate these the same way. But one group said, gray hair, temperamental, ailing, absent-minded, osteoporosis, pacemakers. I mean, those are good things, actually, but, it may be what you think of. Memory loss, falling apart, whatever that means. Arms fall off on the floor. Wrinkled, childish, feeble, senile, arthritis, hearing loss, hard-headed, over the hill. Okay, what are some positive perceptions? Karen?
Wisdom.
Wisdom, good. Is there anything nice about growing old, Robert?
Grandchildren.
Grandchildren, okay.
Maybe for some retirement if they've got a good retirement.
Okay.
Forward.
Retirement, free time. Is that? Nah, you're just not used to thinking of it. Okay, let's help you out here so we move along. This list is as long as the other one. Wise, loving, has time, goes with the retirement. Caring, cookies. So I say, Grandma always makes, Ginger will make a great grandma someday. Nurturing, gracious, calm, unless they're being violent. That goes both ways, but those that are okay.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. This is what we perceive. So, I mean, I have to admit, when you talk about elderly being, a violent, population, I put exclamation points because that does go against my perceptions.
Yeah, and it just depends. But, many elderly are gracious, calm, sweet, comfortable, kind, sharing. They may make wonderful mentors, patient, compassionate, tender-hearted. The lady we lovingly refer to as the world's greatest babysitter is who we had in mind when we made this list. Because she can play Power Rangers for hours and love it or whatever and all. Okay, a couple of kind of general things to observe. Aging will likely amplify your inherent personality characteristics. So whether you are likely to grow into, then this is accepting some disease that makes your faculties irrational, so forth. Whether we find, or somebody else, you're younger than I, if someone finds you in a nursing home 30 or 50 years from now, being kind, loving, compassionate, or cranky, irritable, childish, and violent, may have a lot to do with the personality characteristics that you have now. And granting fully, in some instances, there's absolutely no connection. Strokes and other illnesses debilitate and distort, and people just simply aren't like they used to be. But in the aging process, there's a high probability that your inherent personality characteristics will be amplified. You'll become more of whatever track you're on now. So the best advice I ever received, as far as I know, about how to age properly, we know how to age wine and age cheese and all these other things. Well, how do you age people properly? To find a role model now and start to develop those characteristics that you think are ideal character traits. If to you the perfect elderly person is that loving grandfather, grandmother, little lady next door that bakes cookies, just whatever it is to you, start now to work to build those traits into your own personality. Okay, we we recognize that there's a wide population of wonderful aged people out there. And we talked 2 weeks ago that aging doesn't mean you're dying, that the two things, we're all dying. And so how old you are is not directly linked to how nearly dead you are. And we need to keep some of those kinds of things straight. There was an interesting program several years ago that an elderly woman was leading her nursing home compadres to the polls to vote. And the reporter said something to the effect of, it was worded better, but it boiled down to, aren't you kind of wasting your time voting on this bond issue because the odds are you'll be dead before it's ever completed. It was worded a little more tactfully than that. But the woman said the nice thing about voting at our age is that you can vote for what's right. You don't vote your own personal interest. You can vote to raise taxes because you don't have to pay them. But you can vote your conscience and you can vote what you believe is good for society. And so there's an important portion of the electorate out there too. But we're just using this kind of as a link as we move to the of violence within society. And recognizing that a portion of that violence comes from the elderly population, comes from the mentally institutionalized, comes through gangs. Mr. Blue. Okay, we'll get organized here in a minute. Yeah. Okay, we'll come back. Gangs are part of the problem. The violence comes in a variety of ways. And gangs are often seeking power through violence. And they do that by controlling the fate of the victim, by winning the fight with rivals, by intimidating and scaring other people into respect. And what they're really doing is causing fear, but it's often perceived as respect by the gang members. We'll talk a little more about gangs shortly, but I just want to call to your attention as we move into this section on anger and violence, that it's coming from various components of society. So let's look at a definition of anger that's in contrast to wrath and rage, because we're dealing with stuff on a continuum here. Are you all finished up with note-taking on this one, or am I moving faster than you are? I know I'm shifting back and forth some here, but it's because these things are integrated, and when we get into hostage situations and how to deal with violence and so forth, we're getting overlap across our audiences. Okay, good. Okay, now I'm going to shift over. You may choose to look these up in your dictionary when you get home. This comes out of the Chronicles Living Webster Encyclopedic Dictionary of the English Language. But this is just a dictionary definition of anger. That anger is a violent, revengeful passion or emotion excited by a real or supposed injury to oneself or others. It involves passion, wrath, rage, and so forth. Anger is more general and expresses a less strong feeling than wrath and rage. So we're looking at a continuum here. And we're going to find out that people who become violent are often over at the wrath or rage end of the continuum. But wrath and rage, both of which imply a certain outward manifestation, the latter violence and want of self-command. But anyway, you're dealing with a continuum here of anger and big frustration at one point, wrath at kind of a midpoint, rage at the other end of the continuum, with wrath and rage being more outward in manifestation. And then if you go to the dictionary and look up wrath and rage, you're going to see the interplay and those come back through. Wrath, the dictionary will tell you, is violent anger, vehement exasperation, indignation, rage, an angry act, especially one of punishment, an act of wrath, reacting to someone. Rage, violent anger, fury, whoops, we got a typo there, violent force or intense activity as of a storm, intense or violent desire or feeling, passion, to be furious with anger. You can see how these are kind of interplaying upon themselves and involve degrees. To act or move furiously, to prevail unchecked as a disease, and so forth. But anger, wrath, rage, these work together. Were you through with that one? Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about gangs a little bit more, and then we'll get into stages of intervention and precautionary measures and so forth. I want to be sure we get this covered tonight. In our next class, we have the director of the Fort Bend Juvenile Detention Center who will be with us. And we're going to see a videotape on that center. We'll also have, we plan to have Lieutenant Malcolm Davis of the University of Houston Police Department here. So I want to get some of this groundwork laid, and that may stimulate your thinking and questions that you want to ask of those guests next week. And certainly they will be sharing with us their perspectives on violence and management of difficult situations. Okay, a typical gang initiation, and this is very general and overviewish, because I'm pleased to say I don't know a whole lot about gangs. But from my reading at least, these are things that are abstracted. The footnote down here says, I had an excellent student paper by a young lady that was a psych honors student, Menta Gardner, and a number of Houston Chronicle articles is where this information about gangs is abstracted from. But a typical gang initiation includes assault by other gang members, which degrades the initiate. Then the person who's selected as the new member has to memorize the gang oath, pledge, and rules. Then they often must execute a felony crime. And this, reports say, creates an addictive power adrenaline type of rush, which then it's like getting hooked on hard drugs. You get a rush from committing these felonies, and it's hard to break out of the pattern then.
Can I say something? I want to share a story with you.
Sure.
Darren out here. I had my wife, she's a school teacher over in Landis Elementary, and one of the gang members, the initiative was if you were driving down the street and you didn't have your lights on, or they were driving, you know how like you signal someone at night to put on their lights, and the car that signaled the other car, that was the car that you had to go and shoot to get into the gang. So the police came and gave warnings to everyone that, you know, if someone tells you to put your lights on, you know, you don't do it. You just keep going. So.
Thank you. What a lovely way to welcome Darren into class tonight. No, we appreciate that, Darren. I'm glad you jumped in there. But I think people, you know, are more careful about obscene hand gestures and other things on the freeway, blowing horns at people that annoy you because someone may whip out a gun and shoot you and so forth. But the expectations within gangs, we're going to come to some more of that. Karen, did you want to add on?
Well, maybe it fits in later. It was just that when I had decided where the apartment complex we were going to move into, my son was initially rather horrified because he said, that basically he'd been warned that was definitely gang territory. And once we realized this really was the best choice, money-wise, size-wise, and where the school district fed into and everything, he kind of said, okay, that he'd had a friend who said they were going to kind of introduce him to the powers that be, I suppose, so they would know that he was not coming as a threat. And he also was told, I don't remember which color, but there was certain color bandanas he was not supposed to wear. And of course, it did cross my mind. This is, I guess, the rebellious part of me that felt like saying, well, what if I wear one? Are they going to come up and hassle me? But I haven't tried it.
Don't push it, Karen. Why don't we finish this unit and then make a decision? Now, maybe it's time to move on with some of this. Okay, just some general things about gangs, if the newspaper reports are correct and so forth. Okay, the threat of attack from a common enemy mobilizes the gang, whether it's Crips or the Bloods or what are some more? Anybody know that? I don't even know the names of gangs.
I just have this is a horrible thing to say, but my sister has a baby, and her baby is from a Crip, which wears blue. I can't remember the color.
One of them, I think Crips wear blue and Bloods wear red.
Yeah.
And there's a third group I can't think of right now.
The actual baby's dad is a Blood, so he wears red. But he left once he found out she became pregnant, and so she has a boyfriend that's with her now who's a Crip, who wears blue. So the baby's father wears red, and the baby's stepfather, whatever you want to call him, wears blue. So there's always a constant battle that if the baby goes with the real father ever, which hardly ever happens, he cannot have on any blue for fear that something could happen with that father and his gang.
And there are handcuffs and certain graffiti and we'll come to some of that. But this is part of the marking. We're going to get to number 4 down here on how graffiti marks territory. Okay, but number 2, according to articles in newspapers, being jailed is often perceived positively as it yields respect and builds reputation, kind of like getting your scars of battle. And so I just watched Robin Hood last night, and watched them slice each other up and be heroes. Gangs are started by often started by ex-convicts and former gang members from other cities who seed new areas. And apparently that's a large part of what happened in the Houston area. Menta and some others rode with the Citizens Ride-Along program with the Houston police. And so she interviewed a number of police officers, particularly out at the West substation. And then there are these other articles. Yeah.
That's where I live, is out in West Houston. And the baby's father, which is a Crip, they come from New York. And that's how, at least that's how his branch spread here in A-Leaf, which is real big now in A-Leaf, because it all came from New York. And they're constantly going back and forth between New York and here. And there's this big, international, whatever kind of national thing between them all.
So, but often, apparently, parents thought, well, we'll get our kids out of a gang in some other large city, we'll move to Houston, we'll move somewhere else, and maybe the teen is even straightened out for a while, and then people discover, man, you were a whatever in New York City? What was it like? That is so cool, that is so interesting, and so they ask all these questions, and all of a sudden this child that's been relocated discovers that they have a great deal of power, and they're able then to seed a new group. And once it's locked into generations, then there's much more difficulty in eliminating the problem than there is if you can stop it in the first generation. And apparently still in the Houston area, there's still a large portion of teens that are in it for 2 or 3 years in their high school years, and then they drop out and get straightened out. It will be interesting to find out about the juvenile detention center and to what extent they interface and can shed some information on this. You probably know from looking at walls in different places that Graffiti marks territory like a billboard. It often uses slang, code words, nonverbal signs. And in the paper that Minta turned in, there were a number of these codings that were submitted, but I decided we won't put those on the public airway, for whatever youth are out there in their pajamas watching this broadcast. Sorry, we're not going to tell you, except to allude to some colors here. We're not going to tell you what goes with what. You'll have to figure that out on your own. Okay, often there is what's called maladapted attitudes and values that prevail. Fear is mistaken as respect. They think that by acts of violence and so forth that they'll command respect. Well, there's a difference, between respect and fear. Kindness and courtesy are often seen as signs of weaknesses, and of course that, at least by my value standards, is a confusion of how things should be. Denial of the gang problem is one of the biggest barriers to the solution and can create the multi-generational gang problems. And I think for a long time, HISD and other school districts, not just picking on HISD, many school districts refused to acknowledge that the gangs were in the schools. Karen?
Well, and then wasn't it Police Chief Brown who claimed that Houston had no gangs?
Mm-hmm.
And it was fascinating how we got a new police chief, and amazing, those gangs appeared like
that, right. So owning the problem is an important part, first step in fixing it. Okay, poor teen-parent communication exacerbates the problem. Parents are not responsible for gangs. You don't get a guilt trip for that one. But sometimes the problem is compounded by the fact that parents don't know what's going on. They're not paying attention to what kind of tattoos their children are putting on their bodies. Or Karen?
Oh, of course, and then this woman, I think, ended up going to jail or something. There was the mother, I think, in California, and I think she was convicted as or was at least tried for kind of contributing to this, because when her son had his birthday, the birthday cake was decorated in all the appropriate gang symbols and everything.
I haven't heard this one.
This was several years back, but I remember this. This was a mother who was conscious of it and kind of, maybe she was trying to kind of, go along. I've tried to envision how you would find yourself baking and decorating a birthday cake in gang symbols, but I haven't quite figured that one out yet. But
I can give you some insight into that. I don't approve of what's going on with my sister, and my sisters aren't involved in it. It's mainly the fear with the dads, with the baby's dad. But you get to a point where if you don't acknowledge it, and you just blow it off, you just pretend like it's not there, it gets worse. You have to acknowledge it and acknowledge the fear that your children have in it and understand that. And yes, you do find yourself making sure that they're wearing the right colors before they go out the door, which I have to do, with my nephew and stuff, because we are worried. Even though it's not that big of a problem, but it's still there. And then, with my parents going through their divorce and everything, and I myself was dealing with it in a really wrong way, my sisters tended to head towards those people who were the same that they were, who had that same thing. And even if it was the gang, it was like their family, because they had loyalty and they had honesty and they had respect if it was fear or whatever. Well, they couldn't trust that in my family.
What I hear Karen saying, though, is not that you wouldn't keep your child from wearing the wrong color because their life might be in danger, but to contribute to the activity by intentionally cake decorating or painting the walls of your house with logos or something. I think what you're saying is compatible. Here, what you're saying, take the necessary precautions so you don't bring violence upon yourself or your family. And she's saying, let's just don't advertise and
yeah, kind of buy into the culture and kind of acknowledges as, okay, this is okay stuff. Yeah, when your kids are little, you bake them birthday cakes. I made an R2-D2 cake in my time, and a few other, and I'm sure nowadays, there's lots of Power Ranger cakes and stuff out there. I'd be cool with that. I wouldn't think it's, I don't think it'd be healthy to be having a, you know, Crips or Bloods cake. It's just,
Okay, checking her. Some of you are real wide-eyed tonight. Okay. If you've had organizational communication, you've talked about organizational cultures. A gang is what, in speech communication terms, we would call an organizational culture. And that culture is marked by some of these we've alluded to, but these different symbols, colors, tattoos, hand signals, clothing styles, jewelry. Some groups, I understand, take on sports team logos and identify with a particular sports group, and that creates a bonding effect. The right brand of designer athletic shoes may be another factor. The color of shoelaces, or not wearing a certain color of shoelaces, can all work together. Hairstyles, shaving certain patterns into the hairstyle.
For particular hair colors, there's, unfortunately, one of my sister's friends died. They thought it was suicide at first, but it wasn't. They found out it was murder because of a gang. But he comes from Conroe, Spring Branch, Conroe area. Not Spring Branch, but out there, Spring and Conroe area. And the girls have kind of like their own little gang. They don't really have a name, but all the girls have exactly the same hair color, the same red tint to their hair, and exactly the same poof up front with the long in the back. And that's how you identify that they're all, you know.
Ginger?
Well, my daughter attends HISD schools, and this year they have a dress code and have to be real careful, and they can't wear anything with any kind of symbols or print at all. It can be plaids or plain.
She's in middle school?
She's in middle school. But one day, there was an incident at the school, and girls that age wear really dark lipstick. And they made the girls take their lipstick off and I called, they said it was gang lipstick. And I called and I said, okay, I'm really supportive of this dress code, and I understand why you're doing that, but I have a problem when you tell my daughter what shade of lipstick she can wear. And the person in charge in administration that I spoke to said, well, a lot of the Hispanic girls who are in gangs wear this really dark shade of lipstick, and I said, every Hispanic female I know wears fairly dark lipstick. That doesn't mean anything, and the girls that you punish were real fair complected and are not Hispanic anyway. I mean, if that's what the point is. I said, regardless, I wish you'd check into this, because I don't think you can legislate the shade of lipstick people wear. Anyway, so they retracted, and the girls can wear black lipstick if they want to, or purple or green or whatever.
Oh, it's so lovely. Karen?
well, in fact, I have that. This is one of those things, sort of one of my pet peeves, is because I see that the schools are constantly trying to keep up with whatever the current gang thing is. And so then they keep constantly trying to pass new rules. Well, now you can't wear this, and now you can't wear that. And, you know, and it just seems like it's a hopeless game, because at some point, you know, the gang will immediately then find something new, some other thing, and, you know, and you're always behind it, and it's just like you're making it to where, you know, there's nothing you can wear anymore, and you're starting to say, you know, at some point I feel like we're just kind of kowtowing to you know, we'll just let these people run our lives, and I don't know.
This is a difficult situation.
Another thing that's bad about legislating what they can wear and what they can't is that it detracts from the actual kids who are really doing well. I mean, my younger sister was like me in middle school. I mean, always making great grades, you know, 4.0s, and always reading, always everything. But now in her middle school, she's in ailing, and she's like at the worst middle school that there is, which is AMS. And she's constantly, because her older sister is very bad-tempered, she's, you know, being treated in the same way, even though her grades are nowhere. I mean, my other sister's failing, whereas my younger sister's making straight A's, but they're treating her the same way that they treated my older sister, because of the fact that my older sister's that way.
Well, we're not going to fix the gang problem in 1, 2, 3 easy steps here. We're kind of pulling this together, one, to say here are some characteristics of gangs. They are real. They do exist. A substantial portion of the violence that we encounter comes out of that area, and we've already talked about how the geriatric area, nursing homes and so forth, contributes to that. So I want to spend the rest of our time in this class focusing on what you can do if you're in a situation, first of all, where someone is angry and just an individual situation where they're becoming violent, and then we'll move on over and look at the hostage situation. For a long time, hostages primarily were just, taken on airplanes with hijackings, but increasingly there are incidents in fast food stores or stop and goes or whatever. So we want to look at what kinds of options we have on intervention strategies. In your text you have stages of intervention, and we won't bog down in these. Most of them are self-explanatory, but they range on a continuum from education, you throw your food tray one more time, or any meal you throw your food tray, you simply won't get any food for dinner, and that's not a threat, that's an educational process. Here are the consequences of violent behavior, of disruptive behavior, and that's over at the one end of the continuum. There are sometimes things you can do to avoid conflict. Certain people have buttons that can be pressed, and if you know that a patient doesn't like a particular orderly or nurse, you may just be able to keep that person away from them, assign wings in a certain way, floor duty, in such a way that the conflict is avoided. You may know if there are certain people who get angry very easily, just to be quiet around those people and at least wait a really long time before you correct any behaviors. Anyway, sometimes you can simply avoid the conflict. Appeasement, sometimes you can give the person what they want. You can strike a deal. Well, I'm willing to get this for you if you are willing to go back to your room, get ready for bed, settle down for the evening. Stop being angry at this other person over here. They didn't intend to offend you, or it's not her fault that the ice cream melted and you didn't get any tonight. Some of you remember a role-playing skit we had on ice cream earlier in the semester. If you haven't watched that tape yet, go back and see it. But someone may be very angry that they didn't get their ice cream, but I'm willing to bring you this lovely chocolate brownie and so forth, or a snickerdoodle or whatever it may be instead. Deflection, get their mind off of one thing and onto something else. A timeout, we do that with our children. You're losing control here, it's just time to go over here and cool down. Well, that sometimes happens with adults too, and you're able to do that. Show of force involves a number of things, and this one let's go through the rest, but we're going to come back to show of force and look at that a little more specifically. Seclusion, which may mean, locking you up in isolation for 24 hours or whatever it may be. Restraints, where the person literally is handcuffed to something or put in a straitjacket. We're getting pretty severe at that point. This is a person who is out of control. And then finally, sedation. They just give them an injection of something, some kind of drug that will calm them down and sedate them until whatever has happened wears off. Okay, back at the show of force level is probably, hopefully, the most severe scenario that any of us might find ourselves in. Probably, unless you're working in a mental institution or a nursing home or something like that, you're not likely to be in a situation where restraints and sedation take place. Now, occasionally there will be fights that break out or something, and a larger person will put arms around a smaller or younger person. Parents may pull two siblings off of each other, and you've got restraint in that sense. But the way it's being used here, we're really talking about heavier duty, more long-range kinds of things. Okay, but there's some things and precautions that are involved when there's a show of force taking place. You've got someone who's really angry, whatever the reason. There are few people I know that just have furious tempers, and I don't know why. I mean, it's not that they're on drugs. Couple I think of, I know they don't drink, they're not on drugs, they just have awful tempers. And if they are corrected or if they are offended, and I'm thinking of young adults here, not faculty. There's nobody at the University of Houston, not even one of my students. Somebody in my other life, one of my other lives. Okay, but the button gets pushed, and this person is just irate. May hit someone, may throw things. But then I'm a kind of complacent sort of person. There's some people who throw dishes at what seems minor provocation to me. There's some folks that get to buy. Of course, you get to buy new dishes more often if you did this one. I don't know. I may have to go, but I don't want to clean up the mess. So it's kind of a trade-off. But you have to hold the button down. So.
Every Christmas we'd have to buy dishes because my mom and my dad would get into such a major fight that my dad would go and slam the dishwasher and all the dishes would break, and we'd always have to get new dishes.
Well, that's one kind, to just slam the dishwasher and get them all in one fell swoop. But there are a lot of people that throw cups and glasses. I see heads nodding out here in the audience, even though these people aren't owning up to who they are. And we won't ask who's thrown them at all. But anyway, if you've got somebody that's really volatile like this, and you're trying to figure out how to cool them down, how to get things back in control, here are some guidelines for that. One is for you to remain calm and relaxed. And I know from talking and working with police officers that this is one of the things they're trained to do. If they got as mad as the domestic violence call that they're making, then you'd have three people screaming at each other and throwing things around and so forth. So whoever the interventionist is here, it's important that they stay calm and relaxed. Not lackadaisical, apathetic, but, just kind of go with the flow. Okay, you need to do mental positive self-talk. Most of us would need to be able to say, okay, I can handle this, I know what to do, whatever it takes mentally to assure yourself that you're going to have the resources to deal with the situation. Okay, number 3 is an important one. Don't stare at the angry person, and particularly if you've got a mentally disturbed person. There's something about staring at an angry person that is likely to escalate it. Karen?
Non-verbally, both animals and humans, staring is an aggressive thing to do. You're kind of one-upping something, or you're definitely, pushing something. If you stare, you're.
But Davy Crockett taught us to star those bars down, And so I guess
animal is a good choice. You're making an aggressive move on the animal, and if it's not feeling confident enough, you may get it to back down. However, if you're dealing with your mentally ill patient who isn't terribly worried about you.
Okay. Well, and one of the important reasons not to stare eyeball to eyeball to the other person, and the suggestion, I don't think I've got this further down, is the suggestion is that you look just below their chin so that you're able to see the face, it's in your peripheral vision, but you're able to watch arms, you're not distracted by their visual directness. And if you're in a situation where the person is highly likely to attack, then by watching their feet to see if the weight shifts, by watching their arms to be aware of beginning moves and so forth, you're at an advantage in that situation. Or at least you're not in as much of a disadvantage as you might be. Stay at arm's length. We've studied interpersonal space in here. If you're at arm's length, they can't sock you in the chin. They'll at least have to take a step or two.
Pay attention to how long their arms are. Don't assume that if you're short, your arms are as long.
Thank you, Ginger. It's their arm's length, not your arm's length. That's good. Right. Now, their arm's length.
A lesson from experience.
Okay. Remain on the weak side. Now, how do you know what the weak side is? Allison?
It's going to be opposite of whatever they are. I mean, basically.
If we're squared off against each other,
Oh,
if I
you mean
think you're going to
physical?
hit me,
Proximity?
Their weak side.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I
Well,
understood it too.
okay.
yeah, I
Never
want to be
mind.
on your weak side. So which side, if I'm going to hang one way or the other, which way is it going to be? Robert?
Would it be the side that they usually don't use? Like if they're right-handed, would you stay towards the left side? Is
Yeah,
that
and if you were working in an institution with mentally ill, with people who have a tendency to violence, you'd want to know, first of all, and the record should show, who has a history of violence. But then you need to know who's left-handed and who's right-handed. Now, if you don't know, are there any clues?
One clue's the way they're standing.
Okay, how are they going to stand, Darren?
Well, like it's like when a police officer approaches a car, you'll never see him with his feet, together like that. It's always like one foot in front of the other one. So if your left foot is forward, it's more than likely he's going to hit you with his right hand. It's
Right.
a balance thing.
Good. That's Robert. Oh, Robert wants to know if that's from experience, Darren.
No, never.
No. You can come on back in. Right. No, that's good. That's right. People, well, if you're left-handed, you tend to stand with your right foot forward. If you're right-handed, you tend to stand with your left foot forward. Okay? What are most people in this country? Right-handed. So, a couple people here left-handed, but you make the assumption they're right-handed unless you've got evidence to the contrary and all. Sometimes left-handed people will put their watches on their right hand just to get it out of the way for writing and so forth. But anyway, okay. Leave your arms at your side. Now, why do you want to do that? Allison?
Well, no, I mean, kind of like with animals, you don't want to make any sudden movements or jerky movements. And I guess if you're moving your arm, they're going to take that as an aggressive kind of approach.
If you're flailing your arms around, stop it, then
they're going to think, well, here she comes at me, I'm going to bounce her back twice, or
Good.
something like that.
Well put, Allison. You all have such a way with words. That's my speech majors. I totally lost the train of thought there. Oh, okay. The other thing is, if you're standing with arms folded, that may... Okay, go ahead.
Closed body language.
Okay, closed body language is perceived as
Negative and possibly aggressive.
negative, hostile, aggressive,
Listening.
and not listening.
But it also means you now have to take another few seconds to get your arms out.
Right.
To react to anything.
If I
To defend
need to
yourself.
block a punch, I've got to unfold my arms, which, for me is even slow. I mean, I'm a goner anyway. But if you have to untangle your body parts in order to defend yourself, that's that extra 1 or 2 seconds that you may need for something else. Okay, good. That makes me wonder what y'all been doing in your spare time. Okay, maintain a defensive posture. Keep your weight so you're not totally off balance. Be ready to go either direction, those kinds of things. Don't corner or get cornered. If you talk to the other person and back them into a corner and they realize that, they may panic. Similarly, you don't want them backing you into the corner. You should panic. Okay. Don't issue orders. That's something that really makes angry people more angrier. When you start bossing them around and telling them what to do. And that's part of what the one person in particular I'm thinking of, this part of the buttons that push on that person is that the individual likes to think of self as an adult, even though the behavior appears pretty childish sometimes. And part of the assertiveness and hostility comes out if the person thinks they're being treated like a child by some stupid adult.
I have a girlfriend whose son is has some learning disabilities, and they tend to be language related, so he's not as successful verbally. He's actually a very bright kid, very good in math and stuff, but has trouble holding his own sometimes verbally, and they've had some problems at school, and they've really had a hard time trying to get the school administrators to recognize, look, when you box this kid into a corner, even verbally, you're able to kind of, put all these arguments at him, and he doesn't have the capability of getting it out. Sometimes he, kind of resorts to violence just because, they're totally frustrated. He can't.
When you run out of words, then you go to nonverbal communication, which may mean punching.
That's what happens with my older sister, because she has a real hard time with male authority figures, and every single male authority figure she's ever had at her middle school, except for one, does not allow her to finish her statement or allow her to even try to redeem herself in any kind of way. They just assume she's going to act bad. Therefore, she just self-fulfilling prophecy. She follows it, because that's how they expect her to be.
Yeah. Okay. Don't issue orders. Ask for instructions. If this person is angry and flipping off here, what is it you want? What do you want me to do? And sometimes you can do it. And sometimes they just want someone to listen to them. I want you to go get my ice cream. I want the warden in here as a hostage. What is it you want? But nicely ask for instructions, and maybe you can help with some of that. Admit errors. If you're the one who's made a mistake, if you botched something else, sometimes just apologizing will de-escalate the situation, whether it's your error or someone else's. I realize they made a mistake. You asked for thus and so, and it didn't happen that way. Or tonight was supposed to be your night to get to go in and see a movie, and somebody broke the projector. Whatever it is. If an apology is an error, it is in order. If an error has been made, then admit that. Sometimes the best thing you can do is nothing. If you don't know what to do, if none of these other things are working, just be still and wait, and let the person rant and rave and fume and be volatile, and maybe they'll just kind of work it out of their system. If you can validate them verbally, I understand you're mad. This makes sense. But don't do that patronizing garbage. I understand you must be feeling really frustrated right now. Use some sense. Active listening. But yeah, I can understand this could make you mad. I'd be upset about this. Whatever it is, you can honestly say that's genuine, that doesn't sound like you're giving them a spoonful of psychological sugar pills. Because if they've had very much of that, they'll just gag on it or worse. Okay, let's pop through some stuff that you have in your book, some types of hostage takers. We won't bog down with these. Hopefully you won't encounter these people, but we need to at least know who we're talking about here. There's the paranoid schizophrenic. They're a real mess. The depressed personality. I'm not okay, you're not okay. We may need to take the whole world out here. Inadequate personalities. There are people who just don't have good concepts of their own self defined. They don't know who they are, and their boundaries of who they are get real confused. And so they may fade in and out of reality. They may get very frustrated about what they want. They may be frustrated about their expectations. If you want to look up some of these types in your psych book and pursue them more, you can. Or even your textbook has further elaborations on these two. Antisocial personalities, they're just sometimes people with grudges and problems, and they're out to take that out on society. So you might find someone who's mentally disturbed that you're dealing with. There are other types of hostage takers that the text identifies. Estranged people, the spouse has left, or for whatever reason the person is apart from others that are significant and meaningful to them, and that creates a problem. Institutionalized people we've been alluding to already. People who feel they've been wronged. A lot of incidents in the last few years of people who've been fired, who take a gun and then go back into the place of employment and shoot managers and CEOs or co-workers who still have jobs. Just had the incident in Corpus of the shootings. Probably the most difficult type to deal with is the religious fanatic. They had some of those hijacking planes, and we'll get more of that in the Middle East and overseas than we do here.
Then again, I'm thinking, but of course, we have the famous incident in Waco just a few years ago. And so we get them here too.
Right. I don't want to get into a judgment call there, but of who started that.
No, but I mean in terms of, but that behavior does occur here.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, we have lots of religious fanatics in this country. I didn't mean... Yeah. You know, whether they take them at gunpoint or whether they put them in compounds and eventually give them cyanide punch. There are several things going. Yeah.
What I've read a lot about lately is estranged husbands and wives, where an American woman marries, an Israeli or Arab, or, someone that's from a Middle East country. They have a child, and the American woman can't adapt to the way that the wife is supposed to act in that type of culture, and then the husband leaves with the child, and the wife has no recourse in order to find that child to get him back.
Yeah. Now, anytime you've got a cross-cultural marriage taking place, you need lots of counseling and planning and understanding going into that. But these are all people who are frustrated for different reasons. They have different causes that have made them frustrated in this situation. Okay, the stages then, according to your text, in a hostage situation are alarm, crisis, accommodation, and resolution. In the alarm stage, what's happening? It's obvious. Yeah, something bad is going down here. You walk into a stop and go, and somebody's got a gun pulled on the owner, robbing the place, or someone's getting shot, or being held at gunpoint, whatever. Crisis phase, what's happening?
It's probably the initial, it's resolved into you are my prisoner kind of thing, and now I'm, you're staring down a gun.
Okay, it may happen very fast. Were you going to add to it, Robert?
Sometimes that's the time when the hostage person, the person who's taking people hostage or whatever, will possibly physically beat the person or possibly rape the person.
Okay, some bad things can happen in a hurry at that phase. Things are snapping fast. People may walk in on the scene, compound the situation, alarm the hostage taker. Just the crisis is blowing up and manifesting itself at that point. Defining it, the parameters of the crisis are being defined. Okay, accommodation. Allison?
Well, that could be in two parts. The people that are being held hostage could try to be accommodating to the hostage taker, and also the negotiator could be accommodating the hostage taker's demands or what have you, and then that falls into number 4.
Okay, and hopefully it all gets resolved. Okay, let's focus for a minute. If you become the hostage, there are a number of things to do and not do. Don't try to be a hero or heroine. Okay? You might escape, but you may cause other people to be killed in retribution. You may do something dramatic like kill one of them and escape, and then the other in a pair shoots 6 other people or something. Okay? Do what you're told to do. Just follow instructions and hang loose. Only speak if spoken to. Particularly back there in the crisis phase. where things are heating up and there's a lot happening and everything's volatile, because I would guess that very few hostage situations occur exactly as the hostage taker planned. They're just, because people don't go out and do this every week, it's a strange, even if you're the person in control and it's what you want to have happen, there are things that don't work out the way you think they will. People aren't where they're supposed to be, or things just happen. Okay. Do not problem solve. I mean, you can think about stuff in your head, but just keep your mouth shut. Rest, if at all possible. Now, it's not likely that you're going to just put your head over and take a little nap, but if you can calm yourself down, if you can get in a reasonably comfortable position, save your physical resources, you may need those later on. Consider escape plans. It's okay to think about them, to be aware of what happens if you know alternative routes out of the building. Just, you have to think about something, you might as well be thinking about what your options are. Calmly ask for help if needed. If you've got a woman going into labor, if someone needs medications, don't start screaming, my drugs aren't here, I'll have a heart attack if I don't take my drugs in the next 3 hours, or, I need certain medications. Just after things have stabilized, then you may be able to calmly ask for help. Pay attention. At the minimum, you may need to do descriptions later on that will help the police in the investigation. Don't argue. You're likely to increase volatility. Wait patiently. Somebody's holding these people at gunpoint. There's a person bleeding to death on the floor. Hey, Han told me to wait patiently. But yeah, that's what the authorities say, y'all. Try to blend in so that you don't stand out as the best hostage, the most obnoxious hostage, the one that they would want for anything. If they need one to make an example out of, you don't want that to be you. If they want one to grab around the neck and stick a gun to their head to show police they mean business, you don't want that to be you. You don't want to make them mad and just get shot on the spot. Nancy.
What's hard, though, in this, if there's children in there, like the mom who's trying to comfort her child and got, shot by the man that was holding them hostage, because you can't control their behavior.
Yeah. Be respectful and deferential. This is a power play. As far as you're concerned, they need to win. You hope the police will win, but respect and deference. Don't try to be funny. This is not a time to crack jokes.
Hostage takers are notoriously short on sense of humor.
So it appears. Yeah. They don't.
They just don't really have sense of humor.
Yeah. And you don't need the people around you laughing, because hostage takers will probably think they're laughing at them. Yeah. So just be quiet. Deception, not a good idea. Don't make up some lie. Say you need a drug that you don't need, or make a claim that's not true. I mean, most of us get caught in most of our lies. And this is not a place to get tangled up in that either. Avoid embarrassing comments. The hostage taker has his fly open, it's his problem. Or anything else that may be embarrassing. Just let it go. Cooperate with the rescuers. Do what the rescuers tell you to do, no matter how stupid it may seem to you at the time. If they tell you to all stack your bodies on top of each other in the corner, just do it. Or to stay flat on the floor, do it. Afterwards, be sure to talk about your experience and your feelings. It's like any other traumatic event. You need people to go to ventilate, to work through this. you know. Okay, now if you're on the other side, you know, you're with the police or you're the psychologist, the social worker, the only available person to deal with this, but you're working at it from the outside, then these are the kinds of things you want to do. And you'll probably have to have help doing this. But you need to contain the scene. You know, you don't need onlooker. The police will do that immediately. They'll cordon off the area, you know, and keep people out. You don't need 2,000 people lined up along Orange Avenue or Boulevard or whatever it is, watching to see if somebody's going to get shot in the fast food store across the street. You know, this is not living outdoor theater type stuff. And if gunfire is exchanged, then don't even be there. You don't even want to be around if bullets start flying. And I remember one of my police officer friends saying to a former crisis class that it's amazing, even if it's just a police officer on a routine kind of call. You know, people walk up and they watch like it's live television, you know, or maybe they pursue a burglar out of a stop and go or something into bushes, and the people are watching because the officer's got his gun drawn, and man, this is exciting. It's also really stupid.
With accidents also on the freeway, it may be even pulled over off to the shoulder. The cars are still going by real slow so they can see what happened.
Well, you need to be able to tell the story when you get home. You know. Now, there were 8 scattered all over 610. Nothing, I don't think there was anything fatal, but, you know, and I was trying to drive 45 miles an hour and still figure out what happened and couldn't get it pieced together, you know. But there was that inclination to slow down and look. And this happens, it often mucks up police investigations and could mess up this situation. So whatever you can do to contain the scene, get other people away. If this is an incident in a department store or something, you may need to get other people removed from the area. Gather information. You know, what do we know about who's in there? There may be people outside the building or outside the area who can say, these 3 members of my family are still in there. But you need information. Who's in there? What's going on? Are people injured? Just what can you find out? Stabilize the situation. Gee, we talked about that early in the semester. Whatever you can do to stabilize it. And then ultimately, it would be nice if you could get the hostage taker to give up. That's probably going to take a professional negotiator, and all police departments of any size have hostage negotiators. It's their job. They've worked through special training in order to know the kinds of things to say and not say. They will know what kind of authority they have to grant requests, what things they won't grant under any circumstances, and so forth. Okay, there's some general precautions that come out of your book, whether you're directly involved or just peripherally, and this little bit of this overlaps with what to do if you're the hostage, but that's okay. Remember that violence is always possible, from striking people to shooting them or whatever. Believe warnings. If this is an institution setting and people said this is a violent patient, believe them. I mean, even if you're just the volunteer who goes in to read to the patient, if they've warned you that this person is potentially violent, believe them. Maybe something in the story you're reading, or if you're reading newspaper, you never know what may cause a person to become upset. Avoid being alone with a person that's violent. Don't act aggressively. If you're in a hostage situation, have only one spokesperson. You don't need different people confusing the individual. Sometimes if negotiations go on for a couple of days or for many hours, you may have to change negotiators because the person gets exhausted and can't continue anymore. But you need to know who is in charge. You know, is the negotiator in charge? Is there a police officer in charge? Is it the warden? Is it the principal of the school? Who is the person with the authority? Who has the power to grant and deny requests and so on? Don't make promises, especially promises you know you're not going to keep. Don't say we're going to have a helicopter for you on the roof with enough money and gasoline to do thus and so, and then it doesn't happen. So it's just setting you up for trouble. Okay, don't allow yourself to be goaded into something. Exercise self-control. Don't be argumentative. We've talked about that before. You don't want to do things to escalate the situation, to make them more hostile. Generally, you don't want to participate in the pity party. Often we looked at those types of hostage takers, and they're often on some kind of a mission, some kind of a cause. They're agitated about something, and if whether you're on the phone talking to them or you're in the group with them, to be going, yeah, man, this is bad. Your wife should never have done that to you. This is a rotten deal, and you're engaging in that. It may simply escalate things. Don't talk down to the person. Don't become pompous. You get that superior-subordinate type of relationship, and things become more complicated and potentially more volatile because of the I-thou superior-subordinate type of relationship. Okay, you want to keep your voice calm and level. Again, police officers get that kind of training that, no matter how angry the person is that they've stopped to give a traffic ticket to, they're 99.9% of them will just stay calm and polite and congenial and so friendly you could just die, but that keeps from escalating the situation. Speak clearly and audibly. You don't want miscommunication that comes from mumbling and garbled messages. Don't assume that the hostage taker is reasonable. Now, we come from a problem-solving culture. We come from a mindset that says people should respond to logical appeals. And if you have a wronged person, if you have a religious fanatic, if you have a person who's willing to die for a cause, they are likely in a highly emotional state. And a person who is in a highly emotional state is not going to respond well to logical appeals. Okay, don't make the person wait alone. Avoid allowing a crowd. Avoid why or what questions. All of these are things that can complicate the situation, that can bog down the negotiations, that can complicate the overall process. Any question or observation that you want to raise about this? Karen?
Don't make a person wait alone. Who are we talking about?
I think
Hostage takers, by definition, are not alone. They got somebody.
I'm trying to remember. I think, though, they were thinking of the hostage. I'm trying to remember what Gilliland and James were thinking about in this. I don't know if somebody's got a book to double check that section, but I think they were thinking of leaving the hostage taker stranded, not stranded, but isolated on the other end of the telephone. We may need to double check on that one a little bit, because you don't want that person in isolation there. But kind of in summary of what we've been dealing with in this section is recognizing that violence is on the increase, that it involves a lot of teens, and this will be a segue into our work next week. A final note, your final exam is in the mail. Darren, yours is in the mail. The people who are here with me tonight have picked theirs up, but I've decided that you'll be doing a take-home examination this semester. The last class of the semester, when we had the exam scheduled, you will be doing an extra class on medical communication. I expect you to watch it. It'll work as a bonus question on the exam, but we have a guest that night who has worked in hospital management and consulting and has a lot of exciting things to say to us, and I think it'll make an interesting closure to that part of the course. But anyway, your exam is in the mail. Have fun with it. The instructions are on there about how and when to get it back to me. Have fun.